Ever since I started learning to code, front-end development was always my least favorite part of programming. That's because the reason I got into coding in the first place was to activate this logical thinking part of my brain. But when it came to front-end development with HTML, CSS and JavaScript, I always felt like it was more about design and like moving a button 3 pixels to the right rather than the logical problem solving that really gets my brain excited. So basically for the longest time, I just simply determined that I am a backend developer. I'm just gonna completely forget about front-end development because it's not the thing that excites me about coding. That was until a few months ago I properly discovered React. I'd obviously been aware of React for a long time, it's so popular, but when I actually properly gave React a chance, I actually found myself falling in love with it, which is something that I never expected I would say about a front-end framework. It's the thing that allowed front-end development to actually become interesting to me. So that is why in this video I hopefully want to share this good word of React to you, and especially to those of you who, like me, were perhaps kind of shunned by React in the beginning and who never took it seriously because you thought that front-end development wasn't exciting. And the way we will do this is I have designed 3 React projects that I think every React beginner should build, and I have chosen them specifically in such a way that they are sort of in increasing level of complexity, where each project will teach you more and more of the basic building blocks and components of React that I think every React developer should know. So let's just briefly discuss sort of the philosophy of React, how it works and what it even means. Whereas in normal front-end development, let's say if we're thinking about a one page that you're building, you would simply have an HTML file with a bunch of code in here. Maybe you'd have like a nav bar, and then you'd have like links in here. Essentially, if you have a very simple page, this can be very fine. But once your page starts to become very complicated, this becomes a problem, because essentially then all you have is this really long HTML file. Like for example, when I was building my personal website, I had this really huge HTML file that I took as a template that I then started editing. And wherever I wanted to edit a certain part of it, I had to like go and find a specific section. Whereas with React, what you would do, if this was normal HTML, for example, for these project sections, you would be defining a section in your HTML code for all of these 3 separately, which is fine. But let's say then you decide, actually, I'm going to completely change how this card looks like. So then you have to manually change all 6 or however many of these cards you have to essentially be of the same style. And when you do that over and over and over and over again, it sort of becomes really annoying. Whereas what you're doing with React, the way React works, is you will define a component once. Let's say this is like a card for your project on your personal website. Let's say the component has a title and it has description and image. What you would do inside the component is simply define these as variables that can be changed. And then in the main page of your application, you would simply use this same component like 6 times, for example. In each of these components, when you are calling them from the upper file, you simply define a title equals whatever, and then title equals, again, something else. And this is much quicker to change. So let's say you want to change the layout of how your project's card looks like in here. All you have to do is change this one component that you've defined once. And if you want to change the information, then all you do is change the information in this upper file here. And once we go into the actual project, I'll actually show an even quicker way of doing this. But this is just to demonstrate the philosophy of React and how using these components actually makes development much faster. It makes it much more organized and just easier to manage and faster to change. And the other thing we have is this notion of state, where let's say you're using a search bar or something where your component needs to remember what is currently written in the search box. Inside that component, you will have defined a state that will remember what is written in the search field. Let's say you want the contents of your page to dynamically change based on what is written inside of here. If you were using normal HTML, normal CSS and JavaScript, you would have to like manually figure out like when to re-render everything. Maybe you'd have to like click a button to like re-render the whole thing. Now that would just be a complete hassle. But the way React works is that whenever this state here changes, every component that depends on the value of the state automatically re-renders. So I think the best way to really understand the importance of all of this is just to go into the projects that I think you should build. And the first thing I think you should build is simply a personal website for yourself. That's just like a very simple one-pager. The way you start a React project is you will write this line, npx create React app, and then the name of your app. And you're going to see a lot of different things in here, a lot of different packages and directories and files that React is sort of going to install for you, so you don't have to manually configure everything. But essentially, you don't want to be scared of this. All you want to find at the beginning is on the src directory, app.js file, because this is where essentially everything starts with your React project. And the way this works, here you can see how the componentizing works. This app is always essentially going to be the outermost component. Inside of this app, you're going to start defining different components that you want included in your application. To see how your application looks, you can go npm run start, which is going to open up your application in your browser. And here you can see that the React creators have essentially given this sort of template for you to start with, and that's fine. So essentially that's just all of this that's now showing up on the screen. And you can see that if you change some of this to say like hello, in here it's going to automatically update. So if you just delete all of this, the way every React component works is you have a function and the name of the component. After the return statement, what you're returning from this function is what you want to be rendered on the screen. And this is sort of like HTML, what you see here. It's not quite HTML, but you can think of it as HTML. You want to be returning one div, and inside of it, whatever you want to be rendered. So if you just go like a normal p tag with hello. So that's just the basic of how React works. Before we move on, the last thing I recommend you create is a directory called components, where you're going to start creating all the different components that you want to create for your application. Component.jsx, that's just the way I like to name my files. So the name of the component.component.jsx. I'm going to go function card in uppercase, and inside of it return, and we're just going to return, let's say, a div, inside of which we have some text called title, and then we'd have some other text called, like, I don't know, description, blah, 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 blah. And the way you access this now is inside of the app component, which again is just the outermost component of your app. You're going to go wherever you want this new component that you just defined to appear. Let's say you want it to be above it, and then you will go and just write the name of the component. And actually, I forgot to do one thing you want to remember. At the bottom, then go export default and the name of the components. And this way, now you're able to access the card component inside of your app component by just importing it, and in WebStorm it'll actually do it automatically. You just have to type it and it'll automatically import this component that you just created. And what you could do here is simply, if you wanted to have this 5 times, you can just do that, just like that. Okay, you might be saying, but isn't that a bit useless? Why would you just want to have the same component like a million times? Well, if you just go and look at, for example, the YouTube homepage, right? Let's say right here, all of these video tiles, essentially, these are probably, let's say, if we imagine that YouTube is built using React, I don't know if it is, I would assume it probably is, but essentially, all of these YouTube video tiles or cards in here are probably made using the same component that has been defined, that has simply a field for the video thumbnail, and a field for the video title, and then the channel and the views and whatever. So then where this becomes really powerful is we can use the same component but have different information inside of it. And the way we do that is using something called props. We're going to define that this card component is going to take information that we want to display inside of it. So to show that how that works, we will go curly braces and we go title and a description. These are just things that we are now saying that we will get whenever we are rendering this card. And instead of writing title, which just renders the text title, we go in curly braces, which is now referencing this variable up here, which we are going to be getting as part of this card. And in here, we're going to go description to then render the description as the second one. Now, if you go here, you'll see that this actually doesn't render at all because we haven't actually given these cards this information that we are saying that we will get. So the way we do that is inside of this app. Let's say we want to render this just twice. When we are calling this component, inside of here, we're gonna go title equals whatever we want the title to be, like hello world. And then I'm just gonna be a bit naughty here and copy paste. And instead here, we go goodbye world and a different description right here. And now if you look at what we see, we get both of these cards just with different information. And you can probably start to see just how powerful this is. You could imagine that this YouTube homepage here is just defined in such a way that there's like an array of data that we want to pass, and then we just render this video card like 1, 2, 3, however many times, just passing in different information every time. And so this is really the basics of how React works. And to really start to understand this in more detail, what I would recommend you do, and this is gonna be the first project that I recommend you build using React, is a basic single page personal website. And the purpose of this first project will simply be to build this understanding of how these components work and how this passing of props and all of this work. And a great way to do this, in my opinion, is that what you can do is go on Google and find these HTML website templates. And you would essentially just go on wherever these ones, find one that you like the look of and make sure that you're actually allowed to use it and all of that. Download the template and then componentize that template. So what I actually did for my personal website, I started with this long as HTML template, which also already had the styles made for me and all of that kind of stuff. So I didn't need to worry about styling because I am terrible at styling. And then what I did is I simply pasted all of this inside of my app.js and started componentizing myself. So it's like piece by piece. For example, I saw here that this part of the code is the header. So what I did is I went into my components folder, created a section for my header, and then I removed this portion of code from the big HTML file and simply copied it into my header component, and then started componentizing it even further. And this could in fact be even more componentized. All of these could be their own components, so you get into like nested components and all of that. But this, in my opinion, is a really basic and easy way to start to build this understanding of componentizing React. So after you understand components, the next thing you want to understand is this idea of state. And for this, I recommend that you build some sort of catalog application. What I built, for example, is this free YouTube documentaries page. I know this is really ugly and everything. And then when it comes to this state, I challenge you to figure out how to use state to implement search functionality for something like this. Okay, sorry, Thomas from the future here. I realized I didn't actually properly explain what was actually going on here. So here's sort of how my application works in the big picture. So I've stored this list of videos inside my app component here, right? And for each of them, what we have is a title, we have a category, and we have a link to the actual video. And then inside of this app component, we're also defining a state for the filtered video. So the state, again, is just like a piece of information that is being stored inside of the component, that the component always remembers. So by default, the filtered videos is being set to be videos. And this is just the syntax for how to set state. This filtered videos is then passed into the directory component. And so for now, this filtered videos is basically just the videos. We'll get into the filtering part a bit later. And then inside the directory, we are using this map function. So we're getting the videos as items. We're just calling it as items here instead of videos. Inside of the grid, we are running a map function where it takes each item, so each video, and for each item, it generates this video card component. Here we're defining how everything is basically going to display. So as you can see, we have this iframe, which is basically just how you embed a video inside of a React component. And then we have the title as well as a button for where they can click to then go to the link and actually watch the video on YouTube. So here's how this works in the big picture. But the most important thing with this project for you is to learn how the state works, and specifically you need to be learning how to use it, essentially implement this filtering thing, which we're going to discuss next. The way this essentially works, inside of this navbar component right here, and I've defined an onChange function. So essentially every time this input field changes, it runs this function. That's what's going on in here. And this handle search change is a function that will do a bunch of things, but essentially what it does, it calls this set search input and sets it to whatever is the value of this search field. And here's where we get into state. State is essentially this value that is stored inside of the component in such a way that whenever the component re-renders, it remembers what the value of the state currently is. And then you can call this set function to change the value of the state whenever you want, essentially. So whenever this handle change is called, it takes the event, and the event target value, which is just the value of whatever is in the search field, gets set into this state. And so from then on, the value of the search input is gonna be just whatever is inside of the search field. And then what happens, these videos, which has been passed into the component from the other component, gets filtered. Again, the details of how this filter function works, it's not important here. You can just Google this if you need to. But essentially what this does is it filters all of these videos in such a way that it only showcases the videos whose title includes the value of the state, which is the value of the search input. And then this is further passed into this filter function, which I have passed into the directory component from the outer component. You can see that right here. I've passed the filter function equals filter handler, which is a function that is then called with these filtered videos, which I'm passing to it in here. And what it does is it sets a state in the outer layer with the filtered videos to be the filtered videos that we just got from the previous layer. And if you're not following me right now, I totally understand, but I essentially challenge you to figure out how state works and implement search functionality like this to some sort of directory application. Maybe it's movies where you're getting some like images and titles from IMDb. Just go on Google how to implement this searching thing if you didn't understand from my really messy explanation. And there's the last application, the last layer of complexity, which is really going to bring some of the more complex features of React, is something like an e-commerce application. The one that I built looks something like this. So we have jackets, men's, whatever, and you can click on them to like go into the different sections. They have prices, and you can probably already tell that this is all one component that's just being reused with different data, all of that. Then we have some more complex stuff like signing in and signing out. This is really beyond the scope of this video. Is once you know the basics, you want to start thinking about things like how to implement multiple pages. So you get into using something called React routing, which is defined right here. So essentially, one of the more powerful things about React is that you can not only have just one page inside of your application, you can have multiple pages. You might say that, well, isn't that how all website works, lol. The way routing to different pages usually works with normal websites is that, let's say you have the website here and you have the navigation and you click to go into this page. A normal HTML, CSS and JavaScript application will do is it will only have the code for this one page that you have open on here. And if you want to open another one, it needs to make a request to this server, which is where all of these different pages are stored. And then the server is going to send to you the new page that you want to open. And the issue here is that this takes time. It takes time for all of these requests to happen. So whenever you want to open a new page, you need to wait for the server to get the new page. But with React, and especially with the React routing, what happens is when you load your page for the first time, the server is going to send all of the code that it needs to load all of the pages. So first, let's say this page is loaded up, but when you click on here, React is just gonna take the parts of the code that it needs to re-render the page that you want, which leads to much quicker navigation and much better user experience. The result, you can see just how fast this navigation is, and that is really why the entire web development industry is moving towards this paradigm of using these single page applications. And at this stage, when you're getting into these more complicated applications, what you really want to be doing is not just trying to be building everything from scratch. As a programmer, what you always want to be doing is utilizing libraries and tools that have been built by other people that you can simply inject into your application to make it a lot more powerful. And you can see that in the bottom here, we've had this chat window that I can just click on. And building something like this from scratch would have taken me like probably days or even weeks. And so I'm glad to say that for today's video, I have partnered up with Tidio, which is a service that allows you to simply inject a chatbot functionality like this. Because as we know, like 24/7 customer service is really important for an e-commerce site. With Tidio, all you have to do is sign up and it will give you this one code snippet that you just have to copy paste just above the end of the body tag inside of your index.html file. Inside the Tidio panel, they have more than 35 ready to go chatbot templates for different e-commerce scenarios that you can get ready in less than 10 minutes. It also shows many useful things like all the active website visitors and enables you to reach out to them with the best offers. It's top rated in Shopify with more than 1,500 positive reviews, and you can use it for absolutely free until using one of their premium plans makes sense for you. If you're one of the first 50 people to click my Tidio link down below in the description, you can get a special deal with 20% off their premium plan. So go get started and create your account with Tidio right now. I'm definitely going to use this for my particular e-commerce website because it just adds so much to it without really any extra work in my part. So those are the 3 React projects that I recommend you build. In summary, a personal website to familiarize yourself with the basics of React and how components work, then some sort of directory app, like for example a YouTube documentary directory like mine, or maybe some data about movies that will make your knowledge of React basics even more robust. Lastly, the most complex project, after which you will really have a strong understanding of React, is something like an e-commerce application. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate a like down below in the description, because it does turn out that actually likes do help these videos get shown to more people. With that, I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.